The Harrington residence wasn't just a mansion, it was practically a private kingdom. A 3-acre estate nestled along the Gold Coast outside New York City, where fountains danced in the morning sunlight and perfectly trimmed hedges curved like green waves across the estate. Inside, marble floors gleamed like frozen lakes beneath chandeliers worth more than some houses. Everything about the place spoke of wealth, control, and perfection. Everything except the 2 little girls who lived there. Ava and Aria Harrington were 9-year-old twins unlike any others. To the outside world, they were the Billionaire's princesses, heirs to the mighty Harrington tech empire. But behind the iron gates and glittering glass, they were known by another name. The terrors of Tower Hall. It wasn't that they were evil, they weren't. But to the countless nannies, tutors, and staff who had passed through the Harrington mansion in the last 3 years, they were impossible. They fought, yelled, hid, threw tantrums, set small traps, locked doors, and even once typed a resignation letter for a nanny and emailed it to her before breakfast. No one lasted long. They had driven out 12 private tutors, 17 nannies, 4 homeschooling coordinators, 2 speech therapists, 1 children's emotional psychologist, and even the former head of security. Some left in tears. Some left shouting. Some left with legal threats. A few left praying. On this particular morning, the staff could sense disaster before it even happened. The day began with the sound of a scream echoing down the grand staircase. Aria! The sound came from upstairs, followed by the crash of something expensive breaking. The staff immediately stiffened. 2 maids froze mid-dusting. A security guard holding a tablet quietly turned on the hallway camera feed, bracing. The girl's newest nanny, a polite woman named Mrs. Pennington who wore a constant expression of faded hope, ran down the stairs at full speed, her face twisted with panic. "They've locked themselves in the East Wing bathroom again," she cried. "With paint buckets." Someone whispered with dread. "Not the paint. Not after what happened last time." The house erupted into motion. Mrs. Pennington raced down the hall. 2 guards followed. Another staff member radioed backup, as if dealing with a security breach instead of 2 9-year-old girls. On the staircase landing, the polished floors glittered not with gold, but with bright purple paint splattered in frantic streaks, as though a tiny tornado had passed through. 1 guard slipped, arms flailing. Another stepped into the paint and stared at the mess like it was the end of civilization. "What do we do?" one maid whispered. "Pray," the other replied. At the foot of the stairs, a floor polisher hummed softly. Pushing it was a tall, tired man in gray coveralls and worn work shoes. His hands were calloused, and his back was bent slightly from years of labor. His name was Ethan Hayes. No one paid him much attention normally. He was the man who mopped the marble, changed the bulbs in the chandeliers, hauled trash, and polished silver rails. Invisible, necessary, and unnoticed in a house that always had bigger problems. But today, the billionaire's chaos was exploding right beside him. He paused the machine and stepped carefully around the streaks of paint. He didn't react with irritation. He didn't sigh. He didn't mutter about spoiled rich kids. Instead, he studied the mess thoughtfully. He had a daughter, 8 years old, who once reacted the same way after the worst night of her life. And Ethan recognized something few in the house ever saw. This wasn't rebellion. It was pain in disguise. Before he could move, another explosion of yelling came from upstairs. "You never listen," Ava shrieked. "I said I'm not going." Aria shouted back, voice trembling around the edges. Another crash. More frantic footsteps. Mrs. Pennington panicked. "I need someone to call Mr. Harrington." A maid whispered, "He's in Tokyo. He won't pick up." He almost never did. Ethan lowered his eyes. He felt a twinge, sympathy, not for the staff, but for the girls. He had met Alexander Harrington only once, a brief, distracted handshake in a hallway while the CEO barked phone instructions to a CFO about a merger. The man was brilliant, powerful, and everywhere, except home. Another scream made Ethan look up. As staff raced past him, he stood still, observing the scene the way a firefighter studies flames before deciding where the real damage lies. The girls were out of control, but he noticed something others missed. There was silence between each outburst, quick, quivering silence, the kind that came from holding back tears, not anger. He turned off the polisher and stepped aside as Mrs. Pennington and the guards hurried by. One guard carried a toolkit to pick the lock on the bathroom door. Because the billionaire's daughters locked themselves in with a frequency that required prepared equipment. Ethan walked slowly, hands in his pockets, not wanting to crowd the situation. As he headed toward the wall to wait, something caught his eye. A tiny paint footprint, then another, trailing down a side hall. While the staff hammered on the bathroom door and tried to negotiate with Ava and Arya through the keyhole, Ethan quietly followed the footprints, not out of curiosity, but because something in his gut whispered. They're not trying to cause trouble. They're trying to escape something. The footprints led to a corridor and ended behind a large marble pillar near a window. Ethan slowed. There, curled up with purple paint on her knees and face streaked with tears, was Arya, one of the twins. She wasn't raging. She wasn't screaming. She was hugging her knees, trembling silently, doing everything she could not to be heard. While the world assumed the twins were uncontrollable, Ethan saw a little girl breaking alone. Meanwhile, down the hall, the staff successfully unlocked the bathroom, only to discover Ava inside alone, kicking a fallen paint bucket and yelling through tears. "You never listen. Nobody listens." Mrs. Pennington reached for her, but Ava backed away, fists clenched, chest heaving. No one realized her sister wasn't there. Everyone was reacting. No one was understanding. Everyone was trying to stop the fire. No one asked what started it. Ethan understood. He had once seen his own daughter scream into a pillow because the world hurt too much, and she didn't have words big enough to hold the pain. And suddenly, in that hallway, surrounded by marble walls and decades of wealth, he made a decision that would change everything. He wouldn't shout. He wouldn't threaten. He wouldn't promise rewards for good behavior or punishments for bad. He would listen. Even if no one else did. Even if no one believed him. Even if it wasn't his job. Because sometimes, the person who sees you least becomes the person who understands you most. And the billionaire's daughters were seconds from meeting the one man who would do what no expert had accomplished. He would reach them. Below is Section 2 expanded to 900 words, emotional, cinematic, and continuing smoothly from Section 1. Section 2, the girl no one saw, 900 words. Arya Harrington sat behind the marble pillar like someone trying to disappear into the cold stone itself. Her small fingers trembled around the fabric of her paint-stained leggings, and her purple-smeared sneakers tapped anxiously on the floor. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying not to cry any louder than she already had. The house was echoing with frantic voices, guards shouting, Mrs. Pennington begging through the bathroom door, Ava still yelling and hurt more than anger. The sound bounced off the marble walls and crystal chandeliers like a storm trapped indoors. Arya covered her ears. It was always like this. Noise. Stress. Adults reacting instead of understanding. People assuming instead of asking. And worst of all, no dad. She tried to swallow the lump in her throat, but it sat there like a stone she couldn't move. If we make enough noise, maybe he'll have to come home. That had been Ava's idea. Arya wasn't sure it would work. Last time they tried something big, hiding the laptop chargers, locking the study door, dumping the nanny's schedule app. He didn't come home then either. He sent a video message instead. 30 seconds long. On a pre-recorded talk later screen. 30 seconds. They hadn't even lasted 1 minute of his time. Now, curled up behind the column, Arya felt the truth she never wanted to think. Maybe their dad didn't come home, because home wasn't important enough. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away before it could fall onto her dress. That was when she heard soft footsteps, not rushed, not panicked, not stamping with annoyance or stress. Just a quiet, measured walk. She peeked out from behind the pillar. It was the janitor, Ethan Hayes. Most adults in the mansion moved like soldiers or servants, checking watches, carrying schedules, whispering about deadlines and orders. But Ethan looked different.
Calm.
Grounded. As if the chaos washed around him, but never through him. He paused a respectful distance away, not too close, not looming over her. He didn't ask why she was hiding or demand she return to the bathroom. He didn't even comment on the paint smeared across the marble floor that he would probably have to clean later. He just said, gently, "That looks like a heavy day." Arya stared at him, confused. Adults usually started with, "What did you do? You shouldn't behave like this. This isn't how young ladies act. Apologize immediately." But Ethan said none of those things. She didn't answer. Words were hard when you were holding back the kind of cry that could embarrass you for hours. Ethan looked around the empty corridor, then slowly lowered himself onto the floor, not close enough to crowd her, but close enough that she didn't feel alone. "You know," he said quietly, "messy days happen to everyone. Kids, adults, even janitors." Arya sniffed and looked down at her shoes. "No one understands," she whispered. "Then maybe," Ethan said softly, "you just haven't had someone who listens yet." She peeked at him. Listens? Most adults didn't listen. They corrected. They explained. They talked to her like she was a malfunction that needed rebooting. "Everyone thinks we're difficult," she murmured, voice small. Ethan smiled gently. "I think you're 9. She blinked. He continued, "And 9-year-olds feel things. Big things. And sometimes they don't have a big enough place to put them yet." No one had ever said something like that to her before. For a moment, Arya forgot she was supposed to be the troublemaker. She forgot she was supposed to be strong and loud and fearless. She forgot she was angry. She just felt seen. From down the hall came more shouting. "Ava, sweetie, please calm down. That's not polite. Don't tell me to calm down." Arya winced. She knew that sound. Ava was seconds from hitting the point where the sob was bigger than the scream. Ethan didn't move immediately. He stayed seated, letting the silence breathe. "Is she mad?" he asked gently. "Or is she hurting?" Arya's voice cracked around the answer. "Hurting." "How long?" "Too long." Ethan looked at her, not with pity, but with understanding. The kind that came from seeing his own reflection in someone else's pain. "My daughter used to hide behind things too," he said quietly. "Not pillars, laundry baskets mostly. She didn't want anyone to see her upset."
"Why?"
Arya whispered. "Because she thought being sad made her a problem." Arya looked down again. That was a feeling she knew all too well. Then Ethan leaned back slightly, as if making a promise. "You're not a problem. You're a person." Arya bit her lip. No one ever said that either. After a long moment, she asked in a voice almost too quiet to hear, "Are you going to tell on me?" "No," he said. "Why would I?" She hesitated. "Everyone always tells someone." Ethan chuckled softly. "I'm not everyone." He glanced toward the distant shouts but didn't rush. "You know, paint footprints tell a story," he said with a small smile. Arya looked horrified. "I didn't mean to." "I know." He pointed gently at the floor. "Those prints don't look angry. They look like someone ran away to breathe." Arya's mouth opened slightly. How had he known? From the other end of the corridor, the guard radio crackled. "Bathroom breach secured. Subject Ava contained."
Subject. Contained.
As if a little girl was a threat that needed neutralizing. Arya's shoulders tightened reflexively. Adults talked like that around them all the time, thinking the twins didn't understand. But they understood every word. Heard every nickname. The Terrible Two. The Hurricane Sisters. The Harrington Handful. Subject contained. Ethan sighed quietly. "That sounds cold." Arya swallowed. "People don't know what to do with us." Ethan looked at her gently. "That's usually because they're scared. Not of you, of failing you." She blinked. Failing them? No one in the house had ever thought that way. Children caused failure. Adults suffered from it. But Ethan turned the idea around. He slowly stood, but moved no closer. "I'm going to check on your sister," he said. "Not because she's out of control, because she sounds like she needs someone." Arya looked up at him with wide, confused eyes. "Someone who listens?" He nodded. Then he offered something she didn't expect. "You can come if you want. or stay here. Either choice is okay.
Choice.
Another new idea. Most adults demanded obedience. Ethan offered agency. Arya stood on shaky legs. She didn't take his hand, but she walked beside him, paint footprints following them like the story they told. When they reached the end of the corridor, the household staff turned, shocked. A guard pointed at Ethan. "What are you doing here?" "Sir, this is a disciplinary situation." Ethan spoke calmly.
No.
"It's a human situation." Everyone stared. No one knew what to say. Because for the first time since the Harrington mansion became a storm zone, someone didn't treat the twins as problems.
He treated them as children.
And that was the moment, quiet, unnoticed, and away from billionaire eyes, when Ethan Hayes unknowingly stepped into a role greater than anything written on his employee ID badge. Not a janitor, not a servant, but the first adult who truly saw them. Below is Section 3 expanded to 900 words, continuing smoothly, emotional, cinematic, and building toward Ethan, doing the impossible. Section 3. The impossible happens, 900 words. When Ethan and Arya reached the East Wing bathroom, the hallway looked like a war room. Mrs. Pennington had one hand on her forehead, pacing like she was calculating 50 ways to resign without losing her recommendation letters. Two guards stood at attention, unsure whether they were supposed to provide tactical support or emotional counseling. A maid hovered in the corner, holding a towel as though it were a riot shield. Ava Harrington, meanwhile, stood in the middle of the tiled room, chest heaving, purple paint streaked across her dress like battle war paint. Her fists were balled, her chin quivered, and her eyes shined with unshed tears she was too proud to let fall. When Arya stepped into view, Ava froze. "You left," she croaked, hurt layered under the fury. Arya looked at her twin, the other half of her heartbeat, and whispered, "I needed to breathe." That was all it took. Ava's face crumbled, and Mrs. Pennington, misreading everything, rushed forward like a soldier trying to defuse a bomb. "Ava, honey, please calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down," Ava screamed, voice shaking. "No one ever listens. No one even asks why we're upset." A heavy silence fell. Arya shrank back. The maid flinched. One guard stared at his shoes. Mrs. Pennington, exhausted beyond reason, reached out again. And that was the wrong move. Ava recoiled, shoulders lifting defensively. Her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was desperate. "You don't get it. Nobody gets it." Ethan could see where this was going, the emotional balloon fully inflated, seconds from bursting. He stepped forward, not fast, but steady, placing himself gently between the girls and the adults. His voice was calm, level, and startlingly soft. "Ava," he said, "you're right." Everyone paused, even Ava. Mrs. Pennington blinked. I'm sorry," Ethan continued, speaking to Ava as though they were alone. "No one has been listening, not really." Ava's eyes widened, confusion mixing with indignation and a flicker of hope, something she didn't dare feel unless it was real. Ethan slowly lowered himself to sit on the bathroom floor, legs crossed, hands relaxed on his knees. He didn't tell her to sit with him. He didn't motion. He just made space. That was enough. Arya walked over and sat beside him. After a long moment, Ava followed, sitting stiff and tense like a soldier refusing to let her armor drop. Mrs. Pennington opened her mouth to object, but Ethan looked up with quiet gravity. "Just give us a minute." Something about the way he said it, calm, confident, not pleading, reminded everyone that they were dealing with a man who had seen pain before. The adult stepped back, unsure, uncomfortable, but curious. Ethan looked at the twins gently. "I have a question. One that no one seems to have asked." Both girls turned their tear-filled eyes toward him. "What's hurting?" Ava tried to look away, chin trembling, but the words slipped out before she could stop them. "He doesn't want to be with us." Her voice cracked. Arya hugged her knees. "He's always gone," Ava continued, as if a dam had broken. "Meetings, interviews, investment calls, video conferences, he's always too busy." Arya nodded quietly. "He left for Tokyo last week," she whispered. We haven't seen him in almost a month. Ethan nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of that truth. The staff reacted with guilty discomfort. They had known the billionaire traveled often, but hearing the impact out loud was different. Ava whispered, "He missed our birthday." Arya looked down. "And our school dance performance." A pause. "Our last soccer match." Her voice faded, replaced by shaking silence. Mrs. Pennington looked stricken but still confused. "But he sends gifts," she tried gently. "He always." Ava's voice exploded again, but not with anger. With heartbreak. "We don't want gifts." Her voice echoed off the walls. "We want him." Those 4 words hit harder than any tantrum ever could. A guard cleared his throat and excused himself, suddenly overwhelmed. The maid turned her face away, dabbing her eyes. Mrs. Pennington clasped her hands together, wishing she had understood sooner. Ethan met Ava's gaze steadily, not shocked, not judgmental, just present. "That makes sense," he said softly. "People don't want presents when they're lonely. They want presents." Arya nodded, shoulders shaking. Ava wiped her eyes and choked out, "Kids just want their dad." Why is that so hard? Ethan didn't sugarcoat. He never did. Because sometimes adults get so busy providing that they forget to be present. Ava blinked. Arya swallowed hard. Then Ethan did something that changed everything. He took a slow breath and showed them the tool that had saved his own daughter. "I want to teach you something," he said. "It's called the balloon rule." The twins stared. Ethan held out his hands like he was cradling something invisible. "Every feeling," he explained, "is like a balloon. And every time something hurts, the balloon gets bigger." He inhaled deeply, expanding his hands. "When you keep filling it and filling it and filling it eventually." He clapped his hands sharply. "P.O.P." Ava flinched. Arya whispered, "That's what happens to us." "Yes," Ethan said gently. "And people focus on the popping instead of what filled the balloon in the first place." Both twins stared at him, 2 brilliant little minds realizing someone finally understood the source instead of reacting to the explosion. Ethan continued, "So when the balloon gets too full, you do something simple." He exhaled slowly. "You let air out, little by little, before it pops."
How?
Ava asked, voice fragile, hopeful. Ethan demonstrated.
Sit.
Feet on the floor. Hands loose. Shoulders relaxed. Breathe in through your nose. They followed, hesitant but willing. Then slowly out through your mouth, like you're letting the balloon deflate. He breathed out with a soft sh, shoulders unclenching. The girls copied him.
Once. Twice.
3 times. The tantrum that would have shattered another day melted instead. Ava's hands unclenched. Arya's shoulders dropped. Their breathing steadied. And for the first time in years, silence wasn't tense. It was peaceful. Mrs. Pennington watched, stunned. She had tried reward systems, charts, timeouts, positive reinforcement. Nothing ever lasted longer than a few days. This took minutes. Ethan leaned back casually. When feelings get too big, you don't fix them with punishment. You fix them by making space for them. Ava wiped her eyes. "Is that how you help your daughter?" she whispered. Ethan nodded. "She lost her mom a few years ago. For months she didn't talk. She just filled her balloon quietly until she popped. So we learned how to let air out together." Arya's face softened with deep empathy. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. Pain is something everyone understands, no matter where they come from. The room fell quiet again.
Peaceful this time.
Then the impossible happened. Ava spoke in a small, hesitant voice. "Can we practice that every time we feel too big inside?" Ethan nodded. "I'd be honored." For the first time in years, 2 little girls were not problems to be controlled. They were children learning to heal. And in the hallway outside, the staff stared at the closed bathroom door, wondering what sort of magic was happening inside. They would soon learn. It wasn't magic. It was something rarer in that house. Understanding. And it was only the... Below is Section 4, expanded to 900 words, continuing smoothly, emotional, and cinematic. Section 4. A janitor becomes the miracle. 900 words. Word spread through the Harrington mansion faster than broken glass rolling across marble floors. The janitor calmed the twins. At first, staff whispered it as a joke. Then they whispered it again, slower, uncertain, almost afraid to believe it. And then reality set in. 2 guards leaned on their radios, stunned. 2 maids stood in a hallway, staring at each other. The head cook paused mid-ladle with soup dripping back into the pot. No one could comprehend it. Ethan Hayes, the janitor, the man who fixed faucets and changed light bulbs, had done in 20 minutes what therapists, specialists, and child behavior experts had failed at for years. In the mansion's world of hierarchy and status, something quietly scandalous had occurred. The lowest-ranking employee had succeeded where the highest-paid professionals had not. Mrs. Pennington was the first to see it with her own eyes. She watched the twins, still sitting cross-legged on the bathroom floor, breathing slowly, peacefully, listening to Ethan as though he were speaking ancient wisdom instead of simple human understanding. When they were calm, Ethan gently stood and spoke as if discussing homework instead of emotional survival. So, what happens next? Ava and Arya looked at him like students waiting for the next lesson. When something hurts, Ethan said, instead of screaming, shutting down, or trapping your nanny in a paint disaster. The girls cracked the tiniest smiles. You try a balloon break. 3 breaths, 1 question. Arya tilted her head. What question? Ethan tapped 2 fingers over his heart. What am I really feeling? Not what did I do wrong? Not how should I behave? But what am I feeling? Ava's voice was small. No one ever asks us that. Ethan nodded. Then start asking yourselves. Mrs. Pennington cleared her throat, stepping forward cautiously, as though approaching a fragile miracle. That's, she murmured, voice trembling slightly, remarkable. Ethan didn't boast. He didn't take credit. He simply said, they didn't need fixing. They needed space. The day begins again. He helped the girls to their feet. They looked smaller now, not in size, but in burden. As if someone had helped them set down a backpack they'd been carrying alone for far too long. Ethan walked them down the corridor, not holding their hands, not leading them like children, but walking beside them like equals. Mrs. Pennington followed, still shaken, wiping at her eyes whenever the girls weren't looking. She'd spent 2 years blaming herself, thinking she wasn't skilled enough, firm enough, patient enough. Now she understood a truth no one else had seen. It had never been about skill. It had been about presence. When the twins reached the kitchen, the staff froze. Eyes widened. The dishwasher paused mid-load. Chef knives hovered over vegetables, and a live kitchen broadcast playing on 2 wall screens seemed suddenly irrelevant. Arya looked around nervously. They're staring, she whispered. Ethan smiled softly. Maybe they've never seen peace here before. Ava exhaled. Us either. Mrs. Pennington cleared her throat, offering gently. How about breakfast, girls? Normally, breakfast was a battlefield. Someone crying, someone refusing food, 2 plates going cold while staff took turns trying to coax order from chaos. But today, Arya nodded. Ava nodded too. A small thing. A monumental thing. The cook stammered uncertainly. Pea pancakes. Ava blinked.
Yes.
With strawberries? The man nearly dropped his pan. Of course. Ethan stepped to the side to mop up a few stray paint droplets still stuck to Arya's shoe's print. He wasn't performing a miracle. He was simply doing his job again. But the mansion wasn't used to miracles and janitorial duties happening in the same body. The meeting. 30 minutes later, as Ethan pushed his cleaning cart through the main gallery, he heard someone clear their throat. Mrs. Pennington stood there, wringing her hands. Mr. Hayes, she said, looking at him like he'd just revealed secret superpowers, may I speak with you privately? He nodded and followed her into a small reading lounge lined with oak shelves and leather-bound novels that no one in the house had touched in years. She took a deep breath. I don't understand how you did what you did. Ethan shook his head. It wasn't complicated. It looked like a miracle to me. It wasn't, Ethan said quietly. It was attention, respect, and kindness. Mrs. Pennington sat slowly, almost collapsing. You know, she whispered, I have 2 master's degrees in child psychology, and I realize today I've never once thought to sit on the floor with them. Ethan's response was simple. Children don't rise to us. We kneel to them. The words hit her so deeply she had to wipe her glasses. She looked up, voice tremoring. I'm afraid what happens when Mr. Harrington returns. Ethan didn't flinch. He loves them, he said. Mrs. Pennington stared at him. You sound so sure. Ethan nodded. A man can work himself to death for his kids and still forget to show up. Mrs. Pennington swallowed. You speak from experience. Ethan looked at the bookshelf behind her, the worn corners and dust patterns reminding him of a life before grief. My wife passed when my daughter was 6, he said. For months, I tried to work more, earn more, compensate more, but she didn't need more money. He exhaled. She needed more of me. Silence settled through the room. And then, unexpectedly, Mrs. Pennington asked, Would you be willing to stay near the girls today? Just in case they need another balloon break. Ethan smiled warmly. I'm not a counselor. No, she said. You're something better right now. He nodded. I'll be around. Peace and echoes of pain. The day passed differently than any other in the mansion's recent memory. At breakfast, the twins ate without shouting. At lunch, Arya requested a balloon break when she became frustrated over a puzzle. Ava, who normally threw the nearest object, sat beside her and breathed too. Ethan observed quietly as he worked, never hovering, never intervening unless invited. He watched the girls walk past giggling, watched staff stare as though seeing ghosts. By mid-afternoon, something beautiful happened. 2 housekeepers whispered as they wiped a mirror. What are they doing? Talking. No screaming. No screaming. One of them paused. I didn't know they had that in them. Ethan did. He had seen it behind the fear, behind the confusion, behind the ache of 2 little hearts that had learned how to shout because whispering never brought their father home. But miracles have consequences. Just after sunset, a sleek black limousine rolled up the estate's circular driveway, silent, polished, and expensive. The butler rushed forward. Mrs. Pennington went pale. Arya gasped. Ava's eyes widened with dread and hope colliding in the same heartbeat. The staff murmured, Mr. Harrington is home. The man whose absence had built the storm was finally about to face the peace born in his absence. And tomorrow, he would learn that while he was away building an empire, his daughters had learned to build themselves. Ethan Hayes, the janitor, had done the impossible, but the hardest part was still ahead. Section 5 to 900 words. The day everything changed. The following Monday morning, the school hallways buzzed with whispers and disbelief. Teachers who once hid from the billionaire's twin daughters now peeked curiously into classrooms, wondering if the rumors were true. Did you hear? The twins said thank you to a teacher. No, impossible. One teacher swore she saw Clara holding the door open for another student. Another claimed Alyssa returned a dropped pen and apologized, without being prompted. But the transformation was only fully visible to one person. Daniel. When he walked into the classroom that morning, broom and mop in hand, he barely had time to start before Clara approached him. Good morning, Mr. Daniel. She said it gently, not like a command, not like entitlement, but almost shyly. Alyssa followed. We made breakfast yesterday. By ourselves. Well, we tried. Clara nodded proudly. Our dad said he wanted the day off, so we wanted to help. Daniel nearly dropped the broom. He'd spent weeks repairing their hearts from the inside, step by step, but now, for the first time, he saw something new.
Selflessness.
He smiled. I'm proud of you both. The twins beamed, and then, the door swung open. Their father stood there. Michael Sterling, billionaire, owner of half the city. And yet, he looked strangely nervous, as if unsure how to begin. Girls, I'd like a moment with Mr. Daniel. The twins exchanged a look. Clara whispered, Don't let him yell at you. He always yells when he's wrong. Daniel chuckled. No yelling, Michael said softly. Not today. They headed out, closing the classroom door behind them. A talk years overdue. Michael stood facing Daniel, hands in pockets, looking like a man who ruled the world, yet had no idea how to rule his own home. "I want to apologize," he began, "for the trouble and the workload and the chaos my daughters caused." Daniel shook his head. They weren't the problem. They were hurting. Michael tensed. "You make that sound like it's my fault." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Because it is." The billionaire's jaw tightened. Daniel continued quietly. "Your daughters spent every day trying to get your attention. And no matter what they did, good or bad, you weren't there to see it. Eventually, they settled for the only thing they could guarantee, getting noticed for misbehaving." Michael sank into a student desk, elbows on knees. For once, he looked like a father, not a CEO. "I didn't know," he whispered. "You didn't look," Daniel replied. Silence hung heavy between them. Daniel could have stopped there. But he didn't. "You're not a bad man. Just a busy one. But your girls needed their father more than your success." Michael finally spoke, voice rough. "What would you have done differently?" Daniel looked out the window, remembering another life, another child, another loss. "I would have given anything to spend more time with my daughter. But life had other plans. When I lost her mother, I promised myself, no matter how hard things got, I would never make my little girl feel alone. Because I know what that loneliness does to a child." Michael swallowed hard. His voice was barely more than a breath. "They said they don't remember the last time I ate dinner with them." Daniel didn't judge. He just nodded. "Then start today." A billionaire's unthinkable request. Michael suddenly stood up, gathering himself. "Mr. Daniel, you're not a janitor." Daniel blinked. "I assure you, mop, broom, and back pain say otherwise." Michael shook his head. "You're a teacher. Not by title, but by impact. You taught my daughters what an entire school failed to teach them." "I just listened," Daniel replied. "You did more than that." Michael stared at him with intensity. "You changed them. And you changed me." A quiet knocked at the door.
Daddy?
"Can we come in?" The twins re-entered carefully, like they feared interrupting something important. Michael knelt in front of them, something he probably hadn't done in years. "Girls, I'm sorry." Clara froze. Alyssa's lips trembled. "For what?" Clara whispered. "For not being there. For missing dinners, mornings, stories, weekends, for thinking money could replace time." Alyssa burst into tears and flung her arms around him. Clara followed, trying to keep her chin strong but failing, tears spilling anyway. Daniel looked away, giving them the moment. Michael held both daughters tightly. "I'm not going anywhere. From now on, we eat together. We read together. We talk. And I'm canceling at least 2 business trips this month." The twins gasped. Clara blinked dramatically. "Are you dying?" He laughed through tears.
No.
"I'm waking up." Then Michael turned to Daniel. "Come dinner tonight."
Please.
"They'd like that. And honestly, so would I." Daniel hesitated. "I wouldn't want to intrude." "You would be honored," Clara cut in. "Ordered," Alyssa corrected with a tiny smirk. "Fine," Daniel chuckled. "If your father is okay with it." "I am," Michael said. Then something unexpected. "I'd also like to offer you a job." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I already have one." "Not anymore," Michael said. "I want you as a full-time behavioral mentor for the school, my school. You'll be paid like a department head, and no more mops unless you want them." Daniel stared, stunned. He thought of the long nights cleaning classrooms no one appreciated. He thought of his daughter. How proud she would be. "I'll consider it," he said quietly. Michael smiled. "That's all I can ask." The dinner that changed a life. That evening, Daniel arrived at the Sterling mansion. No servants hovered. No staff stood to attention. Instead, the billionaire and his girls were already seated, napkins folded awkwardly, plates slightly crooked, but smiling. The twins fought over who would pour Daniel's water, spilling half on the tablecloth. Everyone burst out laughing. For the first time in years, that massive mansion felt like a home. The dinner lasted 2 hours. Not because of the food, but because for once, time wasn't rushed. Michael and Daniel spoke like equals. The twins giggled, told stories, and argued over who had changed more. At the end, Clara looked at Daniel and said, "Mr. Daniel, thank you for giving us our dad back." Alyssa nodded. "And for not giving up on us." Daniel blinked against tears. He had lost so much in life, but tonight he had gained something, too. Not money,
Not a new job.
but a reminder that broken families could be mended, and broken hearts could relearn how to love. Even billionaire twins. Even a grieving single father. Even a man with a mop and a memory of better days. One final lesson. When Daniel left the mansion, Michael walked him to the gate. "You told my daughter something," Michael said. "That people grow when someone believes in them. I want you to know something too." Daniel waited. "You're the kind of man every child deserves." Daniel smiled softly. "And you're the kind of father every child can have, if they're lucky." Michael nodded, and for once, no deals, no signatures, no contracts. Just respect. The gate closed behind Daniel, but as he walked away, he knew.
This was not the end.
This was the beginning of 3 new lives. And one impossible transformation. All because a single dad janitor refused to believe that 2 troublesome girls were beyond saving.